This part 2 of the monsters locked inside Ebongweni Supermax prison, we begin with Thabo Bester, known as the Facebook rapist. Bester rose to notoriety in the early 2000s. He became known as the Facebook rapist because he lured women through social media under false pretenses. His crimes were violent and brazen, including murder and robbery, and they left a lasting mark on the victims and communities affected. In 2012, Bester was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. But his story didn't end there. In May 2022, the country was stunned when a fire broke out in Bester's prison cell at Mangang Correctional Center. Reports claimed he had died in the blaze. The body found in his cell was initially identified as his. But months later, authorities admitted the truth. Thabo Bester had not died. He had escaped. DNA testing revealed the burned body was someone else entirely. The escape was elaborate. Investigations suggested Bester used a disguised identity and elaborate planning, possibly with outside assistance, to walk out of the prison undetected. This escape exposed major questions about security and corruption within South Africa's correctional system. During his time on the run, Bester allegedly lived openly under false identities, moving across suburbs in Johannesburg. He was accompanied by Dr. Nandifa Magudumana, a well-known social media figure who became an accomplice in his flight from justice. Their movements and activities captured national attention, and Bester was considered a high-risk fugitive. After nearly a year at large, Bester and Magudumana were arrested in April 2023 in Arusha, Tanzania, where they were found with multiple fake passports and documents. They were extradited back to South Africa. Bester was re-incarcerated and now faces additional charges related to his escape and the conspiracy that made it possible. Once back in custody, authorities faced a critical decision. Bester's crimes were violent and premeditated. His escape revealed a level of cunning, planning, and outside assistance that made him a unique security risk. His prison escape trial, originally set for February 2025, has been postponed to July 2026, but officials concluded that he should not remain in a regular maximum security prison where he could have daily contact with staff and other inmates. Instead, he was transferred to Ebongweni Super Maximum Correctional Center, the fortress reserved for inmates requiring strict isolation, limited contact, and maximum monitoring. At Ebongweni, Bester now lives under near-complete isolation, tight movement control, 23-hour daily lockdown, and minimal contact with staff and other inmates. This placement reflects the severity of his crimes and the unprecedented danger posed by someone who once manipulated the system so successfully. Number 2. William Mbatha, the King of Bling. William Mbatha became widely known across South Africa as the King of Bling, a nickname inspired by his obsession with luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive cigars, and flashy wealth. But behind the glamour was a criminal operation that would eventually bring his empire crashing down. Mbatha was born in Atteridgeville, west of Pretoria, and for years presented himself as a successful businessman. He owned several properties, ran businesses including a travel company and a nightclub, and was often seen driving luxury vehicles and living a lavish lifestyle. This flashy image earned him the nickname King of Bling. But investigators later alleged that much of this wealth came from a violent criminal spree. Between 2008 and 2009, Umbatha and his accomplices carried out a series of armed robberies across Gauteng. Their method was both simple and dangerous. They would dress as police officers, using police uniforms, identification cards, and vehicles fitted with blue lights to stop unsuspecting victims. Once the victims believed they were dealing with real police, the gang would rob them at gunpoint. Victims were often handcuffed, assaulted, and kidnapped during the robberies, while the gang stole money, jewelry, cars, and other valuables worth hundreds of thousands of rand. These crimes quickly made Mbatha one of the most wanted figures in Gauteng. After a lengthy investigation and several dramatic court appearances, Mbatha was finally convicted in 2012 by the Johannesburg High Court. He was found guilty on 24 serious charges, including robbery with aggravating circumstances, kidnapping, possession of unlicensed firearms, impersonating police officers, and possession of police uniforms used during the crimes. The judge sentenced him to a total of 123 years in prison. The court noted that the robberies were carefully planned and showed no regard for the safety of the victims. Following his conviction, Mbatha was classified as a high-risk prisoner due to the scale and organization of his crimes. He was placed in the Kokstad Maximum Security Prison Complex, the same location that houses Ebongweni Super Maximum Correctional Center, South Africa's most secure correctional facility. Within this prison system, Mbatha now serves his lengthy sentence alongside some of the country's most dangerous and notorious inmates. William Mbatha's case shows how a man who once lived a life of luxury, fast cars, expensive homes, and public attention ultimately ended up behind the walls of one of South Africa's toughest prison environments. From a flashy figure known as the King of Bling to a convicted armed robber serving decades in prison. Number 3. Vousimuzi Cat Matlala. From violent crimes to allegations of underworld power and corruption schemes, few names have sparked controversy in South Africa like Vousimuzi Cat Matlala, known as John Wick. Born and raised in Mamelodi East, a township in Pretoria, South Africa, Matlala was once known as a businessman and tenderpreneur, involved in security and corporate contracts. But behind the public persona lay allegations of far more serious and disturbing activities. In 2023, he was linked to a shooting on the N1 highway near Sandton, in which his former girlfriend, actress and socialite Tebogo Thobojane, was shot in the foot and a passenger suffered a spinal injury. Authorities alleged that Matlala had orchestrated the attack, a hit carried out with intent to kill, and he was charged with attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder in connection with the incident. Prosecutors also tied him to multiple other charges, including coordinating syndicates responsible for the looting of over 2 billion rand meant for healthcare in Gauteng. Despite having zero qualifications, he landed a massive 360 million rand police deal while facing claims of fraud and corruption. By late 2025, Matlala was facing 11 counts of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, possession of prohibited firearms, and allegations linked to organized criminal activity. Matlala has denied the allegations, claiming in court that police have no concrete evidence tying him directly to the crimes. Matlala's battles in court have been dramatic. In 2025, judges denied him bail, citing concerns that he could evade trial or interfere with witnesses, including allegations that he held a fraudulent Eswatini identity document and traveled across borders. The National Prosecuting Authority welcomed the decision, portraying him as a flight risk whose influence extended beyond the courtroom. On the 21st of December 2025, the Department of Correctional Services confirmed that Matlala was transferred from Kagosi Mampuru Correctional Center in Pretoria to Ebongweni Super Maximum Correctional Center in Kokstad, KwaZulu-Natal. Today, Vousimuzi Cat Matlala sits inside Ebongweni Super Maximum Correctional Center, imprisoned alongside notorious inmates such as Thabo Bester, Thoza Militaki, and George Thomas, among other dangerous offenders. This placed Matlala among the group of inmates whose custody is treated with the strictest security due to the severity and profile of his crimes. Number 4. Radovan Krejčíř, the Czech crime boss. Born in the Czech Republic, Krejčíř was once a wealthy and influential figure involved in business and finance in Europe. But behind the veneer of success lay a life of crime, including fraud, conspiracy, and violent offenses that would later catch the attention of law enforcement in multiple countries. He fled to avoid justice, eventually arriving in South Africa in the mid-2000s under a false identity. In South Africa, Krejčíř quickly became linked with the country's underworld and was associated in the media with violent incidents, including lynchings and murders linked to organized crime bosses. His criminal activities here went far beyond simple fraud. In August 2015, he was found guilty in the South Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg of drug dealing and trafficking, kidnapping and torture linked to drug disputes and attempted murder. After a long and complex legal process, Krejčíř's criminal life in South Africa caught up with him. On 23 February 2016, he was sentenced to 35 years in prison for these crimes, a lengthy term that reflected the serious and violent nature of his offenses. This made Krejčíř one of South Africa's most long-serving convicted organized crime figures. He was placed in Ebongweni Super Maximum Correctional Center, where the most dangerous offenders are kept under strict security. Inside prison, Krejčíř has been at the center of several legal disputes, including fights over access to educational resources like laptops for study purposes, which have sparked debate about prisoners' constitutional rights versus security risks. Even as he serves his South African sentence, Krejčíř's legal troubles extend beyond South Africa. Czech authorities have sought his extradition for crimes committed in his home country, a reminder that his criminal legacy spans continents. Despite this, South African courts have handled his cases domestically, ensuring that he remains in long-term imprisonment here rather than being transferred overseas. And while he now remains in South Africa's secure prison system, his story continues to provoke debate about justice, prison rights, and how the wealth and influence of a crime boss can still echo long after the verdict.